Now this is, well, what's left of the motor off of my rototiller. Now I've got a Troy-built Bronco tiller, which is an excellent tiller. And I've had that for probably at least 20 years. And it really has been fairly trouble-free. The only problem in the past I've had with it, the carburetor was driving me nuts. They use a little rubber jet. Well, as soon as you get even a whiff of alcohol in your fuel, which happens because a lot of times, like in a gas pump, even if they use the same pump, so there's always a certain amount of gas in the hose. And if you switch from ethanol to no ethanol, you're going to get a little bit of ethanol. Well, okay, so that little jet in there would swell up and it would run lean. It just not that good of a carburetor. I don't know why you wouldn't use brass jets. That just seemed crazy to me. But so I'd end up going in there with a little drill bit and drilling them out, make them a little bigger, and then it would run. But that was an annoyance. The theory is if they go, if you have a problem, you buy a new carburetor. Well, I get tired of that. I like, things shouldn't have to be replaced all the time. Well, like I said, the tiller's been good though, so I really can't complain too much. Until the other day, I started it up and it was running, and all of a sudden it just locked up. Pulling the cord, wouldn't go, and I thought, well, that's odd, so I pull the recoil off, I start taking stuff apart to see where it could be bound. But here it turned out it was actually, the piston was seized in the cylinder. Well, this is unfortunately one of those where they run, it's an aluminum block, an aluminum piston. And when you run one against the other, they can tend to bind. Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I remember back when they first started doing this sort of thing, I was thinking, well, how in the world is this going to work? That was when they first came out with the Vega, when Chevy did, and they used aluminum block and aluminum pistons, and the theory was the aluminum had some kind of harder substance in it, and then they would chemically etch after they bored it, and they would ride on that harder stuff, But how many times have you seen a Vega lately? They all, at the end there were some companies that would actually, for a fee, a pretty stiff fee, you could bore out the Vega block and put in cast iron liners, because that's what you need. You need cast iron in the cylinder. And that's what your better motors will all have, cast iron liners in them. But you don't know if you're getting a cast iron or not. It's very hard to tell. They make so many different models of these Briggs and Strattons. These are good, the overhead valve motor is a great little motor. Compared to the older Briggs, they run quiet, they run cheap, they start easy. They're a good motor. But they had to go and cut corners on some of them. Some of them are like the industrial commercial ones, but then there are these that are like the consumer level ones. Now on these Bronco tillers, they used a variety of motors, Tecumseh motors, Briggs motors. They put all kinds of motors on them. And when I bought this, I thought, okay, Briggs, I like this overhead valve thing. These are good motors. Well, I didn't realize that they were doing that aluminum to aluminum stuff. But like I say, it's run 20 years, so evidently the theory works. I just wasn't pleased to find that it makes them so they're not rebuildable. You'd have to buy a whole new motor or buy a short block. You know, you can do that, but then the same thing on the crankshaft here. You know, you got to worry about that. You're running aluminum on aluminum again. You know, I just don't like that. You know, if you even have any hiccup in the oil, you know, which these tend to do if you start them when they're cold, a lot of times they'll pump all the oil, will end up in the upper end. And like if you have the low oil shutdown, they'll shut down because the oil is all clinging up, you know. So then it's running dry. And they'll shut down and you start them up again. You know, you got to monkey around like that when it's really cold out. But I got options with this now. Like I say, this really isn't rebuildable because what had happened, it's funny too, because the wear on a piston normally is on the sides, on the skirt. That's where your thrust is. But the surface there is fine. Where it actually got tore up is on the sides. Now, one of the things I was thinking, okay, maybe a piston pin got loose in there, you know, but nope, the way they've got them designed, there's only a clip on one side, and it can't. As long as the one clip is in, it's not going to move. Because I've seen that before on motors where the pin comes loose, then it chews into the side of the cylinder, you know, and you get a knocking, and eventually they'll lock up. But this one, what happened, the ring broke, the oil ring. Now, it had been using a little oil last year, and I was thinking I was going to rebuild it this winter. Well, of course, I didn't realize it was not rebuildable. But what it did, it actually broke the oil ring right down in the groove, and the little piece at the end of the oil ring, which is laying here someplace. Yeah, here's it. You know, it's just worn thin, and there isn't much of an oil ring there in the first place, and a little expander spring. But that piece broke, and then it gouged and wedged in the side of the cylinder. Well, there's no way, you know, putting in new rings isn't going to save that. It would just tear that ring up. So, and that bores wore quite a little. You know, you put these rings in, you got like a 1/4 inch end gap on them. Though it still had good compression, oddly enough, you know. So this is junk. Unless I want to go to the problem, you know, buying a short block and putting that in. But I think you're looking at a couple $100 for a short block. And I still am dealing with stuff like here, the camshaft that they use is actually a nylon camshaft. Now, I'm sure that works fine. It runs quiet. I would worry about it in winter breaking, but don't use a chiller in winter. But I just don't like to see a lot of plastic inside a motor. You know, like say, this is the governor here that's built into the cover. Now, on that motor there, that's a junker that I'm going to try to do something with. It's a generator, but the governor quit working. Well, I'm sure it's in this plastic down here. You know, some pin let go, something let go there, and the governor doesn't work. But that one also has problems with the actual, well, I don't think I heard it any, charging system. But I'm going to pull that apart and see if I can't use that motor, because all I would need is that crankshaft, because I need to have that stub and the generator's got the tapered end, and this side cover, and I might be able to make something work, because I need the side cover because it's got the bolts I need to hook the tiller arrangement on. So between the two of them, I might be able to make one workable motor. I'm hoping. Or I do have parts available off of another motor. This one here, which came off of my brother's rototiller. Yeah, it's not a Troy built, it's a similar design though. But he had this one, and he was running it the one day, and all of a sudden, kaboom, and the rod come out the side. But there's good parts on it, so I kept it, and I've actually used the carburetor off it and stuff. But these are disposable motors, and I hate disposable stuff. I like something you can rebuild. What he did on his, for $100 you can buy a replacement Chinese motor that bolts right in there and works fine. But I'm not a big fan of Chinese motors. And you aren't going to get no 20 years out of that motor. So like I say, this one is just a parts. But I have already, I used the carburetor off of this one on my other one. Yeah, that's this carburetor. Things on these that I don't like say, this recoil start. The most common thing you have go on these small motors is the recoil. You break the rope or something gets caught inside, it happens all the time. Now, rather than put screws to hold the recoil on, they've got it pop riveted on. So there's no way you're going to take that recoil off to repair it. You've got to pull the carburetor off. You got a lot of stuff off just to get the recoil off. Now, like the old Briggs 3 bolts, recoil comes right off. Or like on that motor, they actually have screws there. Now, you could drill these out, but then what's going to happen is that inside piece on the pop rivet is going to end up on the magnet on the flywheel, and you're going to tear up the ignition. So you've got to pull carburetor, you got to pull all this stuff off to get down to the recoil. That's not a good thing. Or it's, all it had to do is not have this that goes underneath the carburetor. You could have done it. You could get it off, but they put that little extra piece here that gets right in the way. They really don't make them to be worked on. They are a unit. You replace the whole unit, which is unfortunate. But that's where I'm at. He was quite surprised. He said I was running fine, all of a sudden, wham, big hole in the side. But otherwise, that actually has the same kind of side and with the holes on it that I need if I should need that. But I'm going to have to just tear that apart, maybe tear that apart, and see if I can't make one motor out of them. Now, I could buy a whole complete motor. I think the short block is like $200. The Chinese replacement, like I say, is about $100. Then you can go a brand new complete Briggs is like between $300 and $400 depending on the motor. But there again, I really don't want to get into one of these aluminum on aluminum again. I really would like to get a better motor. Well, for around $400, I can get the Honda motor, which has a cast iron liner. It has ball bearings in the sides instead of running these, right into the aluminum. So that's a better deal, but that's $400. Now, a replacement tiller, they've gotten to be pretty expensive for anything decent. The problem is, it isn't like you can still buy a cheap tiller, but the quality keeps dropping in them. They keep using cheaper stuff all the time, and this Troy built was a really good tiller. The basic tiller is fine. I think what they figure usually on this kind of stuff is this motor was designed to last long enough. Like say if you had a lawnmower, that lawnmower is going to be a wreckage before the motor dies. Well, this Troy built tiller with that worm gear drive is an excellent machine. It outlasted the motor. Though, like I say, 20 years, I mean, it's still a pretty good run. But I'd like to get another 20 out of it. So it might be worth going with the Honda. And I'll probably do that if I can't jury rig something out of these parts. I might end up going with the Honda. I've been impressed with these, but I don't like to see, how much more would it have cost you to put in bearings and to put in a cast iron sleeve, and maybe a real cam instead of this weird little plastic thing. Though, this kind of stuff has been done for quite a while and it does seem to work. It just looks like a potential problem to me. I'd sooner see something iron in there. But they use the same old dipper system on the rod that they've been using forever. So that's like I say, when they run out of oil, they run out of oil. If it ain't scooping oil, you're running aluminum right against metal, and aluminum tends to tear up rather easily. And one of the advantages of the Honda, like this I've replaced once, because these plastic gas tanks will just crack. Well, the Honda comes with a metal tank on it, so there are great advantages. Honda always costs more. People always complain, like on the generators and stuff, ooh, a Honda one costs a lot more. Well, they do, but there's a reason for it. They do last and they are rebuildable. Stuff like this you cannot rebuild. But I can make something out of these parts, I believe. But I've always meant to tear that generator apart too, and because I'm curious. I've never actually had one of these overhead valve rigs apart before. I was curious to see what they were doing in there. Well, I'm not too tickled. They appear to be better than they actually are. They're not that. Though it lasted 20 years, like I say, I shouldn't complain. But when I see something that's designed where they cut a corner, that would have made, it could have been a lot better motor if they wouldn't have cut that corner. That always bugs me. A cast iron cylinder, or worst case scenario, if you aren't willing to put a cast iron cylinder in it, a nice way to go, they could have actually made the replaceable cylinder, like a lot of motors have. This whole thing could have been removable, so the cylinder would have come off so you could rebuild it that way. But when you're dealing with, a crankshaft that's running in aluminum, they're really designed to last so long and then just be junk, which is the point this one is at. But hopefully that one I can get some good parts out of. Because I need to get the tiller going. And I do hate to spend $800. But at the same time, I can't bring myself to buy that $100 Chinese motor. So this is my option. There's other options. I could put a regular flathead Briggs on there. The thing, like I said, was designed to use a variety of different motors. So I could put a different motor on there. But that's work to be done. But I've got to tear that thing apart first and see what I'm dealing with there. Because if that's got that same aluminum type, I'll have to think twice about that. But it's very hard to tell, if you're looking into buying something, it's hard to keep up with the tricky stuff that they do on this kind of thing. They change designs, never to make them better, to make them cheaper. So they can keep the price down. That's where you get your consumer grade stuff and your commercial stuff. And the consumer grade stuff just aggravates me. I don't like to see things made disposable. The world is full of disposable crap. clogged up with it.